Welcome to the Hallway Track, the show for people who wish they were at the show, the chance to talk about the news, the tech, and all the stuff that you'd normally catch in the hallway at your favorite conferences. Today, we are covering the final day of KubeCon Day 3, the end of the show. Before we get into it, I want to introduce our guest. Joining us for the first time ever, we have the amazing Brett Fisher, rocking the goose.
Hello. What's up?
Brett, you want to introduce yourself, Brett? You're a Docker captain. You're consulting. Tell the people what you do.
Well, I talk on the internet for a living now. So I teach Kubernetes and Docker courses to over 200,000 people. I do consulting on the side a little bit. And then I talk like this all the time on the internet at brett.live.
Fantastic. And then I also want to introduce Austin, Dan Pop, both with us yesterday.
What's up? How are you? 2 days ago.
I was here yesterday.
And left an indelible mark on you, Dan.
That's right, Dan. You always do. And of course, the most special of guests. This is actually the CNCF Contributor of the Year.
Ambassador.
Ian Coldwater. Wow.
We have a celebrity.
Wow. Ian, you owned the conference today. Your keynote on the panel was fantastic. And then you won that award. What do you have to say? You didn't get to give an acceptance speech, so I think we should hear it.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the internet, Twitter, my incredible new job as the director of DevSecOps at Twilio. Good on them for hiring me. They really knocked it out of the park there. It's gonna be great. I'd like to thank my cats, all of my Oh yes, Ian, I did.
If you want someone to share culpability in this, Kat did run this past me, and I was like, oh yeah, they'd love it. Ian would love it.
Yeah. So this is not. I cleared this with somebody first. Somebody thought it was okay. I'm not actually Ian. My name is Kat Cosgrove. I was here yesterday. I'm a developer advocate at JFrog, and I bought this wig on eBay on Amazon for $30 2 days ago on a whim to, I don't know, take a crack at Ian for fun. And last minute decided that this panel was a good place to do that. So thanks for letting me do that.
Ian, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. It's fantastic. Congrats again on your win, all of your hard work, and great job on the keynote today.
Oh, as Ian, thank you.
Oh, wow, Ian. Wait, that's not Ian Coldwater?
No.
Yeah, I don't think we need to take credit for
No,
Ian.
that's Ian Coldwater.
There you go. But yeah, another round of applause, right?
Well done. Well done, Kat. Kat returning to her form, but I hope you'll keep the hair.
I'm gonna keep the hair. This wig is actually pretty cute on me, I think. So I think I'm gonna go for it.
That's right. Well,
Jason D. Tiberius just said you can only tell because of the lack of bangs.
Yeah, okay. So I saw the bangs picture and I thought, dude, I don't want to have to cut bangs into this wig. I will for sure screw it up. So I decided to just go without, but I did briefly consider cutting bangs into this wig.
Well, speaking of
Ian, thank you for making all of our lives a little bit brighter every day.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Really.
Well, so speaking of Ian, how about that keynote? Let's actually kick things off by having a quick discussion around the panel. This is the first time there's been a panel discussion for a keynote at KubeCon. What did everybody think about it?
It was the best.
Keep in mind, Dusty Cooley and Ian are both in the chat, so you got to be nice.
It was actually so rad.
I would love to see more things like that at a KubeCon.
So I would say this. I mean, again, OBS game, amazing. You know, all four of them, they were in the room, which we needed to see people connecting from that. And also, those are four people that are at the top of their game in terms of security for what we do. And it was very good practical experience use. And one of the things that, shout out to you, Duffy, you talked about staying curious in this game. It's so hard, we get hit with so many different things. If you look at the CNCF landscape, right? The best part of what makes us great at this cloud native thing is basically just staying curious and playing with all this amazing tech out there. So
Yeah, I particularly loved all of the reminders that they're not actually wizard. I think this was actually Ian saying this, that they're not actually wizards. They don't have arcane knowledge that nobody else can go get. It's just practice. It's just repetition. They have more practice. I say that to students a lot because they do, like, newbies and students do tend to think that, oh, well, you know, they're just wizards. And Ian is outstanding and Duffy is outstanding. Everybody on that panel is outstanding, but it's just practice. And it's important, I think, to continually remind people of that. Like, it is just a time and practice thing for the most part. Not wizardry. It's not actually deep magic.
Kat's message is that you are not special, Ian, and she can copy your hair at any time. Let's go to you, Brett. What did you think?
I was back here clapping, watching that live because we tried to recreate that experience with DockerCon. We were kind of early in the live conference game this year, and I worked heavily with that team to try to pull that conference off in a way that felt natural and it was conversational and fun. Because let's be honest, talking on the internet all day is pretty boring. Like listening to other people on the internet all day is boring. So I love the fun aspects. I love the fact that people talk in conversation and it's a keynote and it's not, super polished and every word is perfect. That's great. I mean, the more you can do that, I think that's going to make these conferences better to attend and be a part of anyway. So,
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I will say for that session, I took most copious notes. I don't know if you can see you can't see it. There's a goose on here. I drew my goose on here, and I've got stay curious, honk the planet. I got this quote from Ian: "Not every bug is a security bug, but many are." I took copious. That was the talk that I actually had the most fun taking notes on. It was just a really fun discussion, and I just walked away thinking, these are like the cool kids of Kubernetes. Like anybody would want to hang out with them, and it was just fun because you really got that sense of community. And this was the other star of the show was Slack. Slack was going nuts. People were honking like crazy. People were sharing stories. They were sharing the love. I actually, for the first time since we started doing these virtual conferences, felt like I was at a conference and felt that energy. And it was that panel plus Slack, and it came together for me.
We got to give a shout out to Giesman too, and obviously Rory too. Again, really just amazing 2000. It's really great. So
really, a really solid panel all around. And I actually want to jump off of that Slack thing because I think the real breakout star of KubeCon Virtual North America 2020, whatever you want to call it, was people figuring out community. It's okay, and it's actually better for you to just kind of build community on your own, right?
Yeah.
One of the takeaways I had from what you see behind you, right, which was Deserted Island DevOps earlier this year, was that all of the really good ideas weren't mine. All the ways that people kind of connected were just giving people a place and saying go do something, right? So we had watch parties, we had just massive sort of interaction in real time. And I think the more we get people into this habit of when someone is doing a talk and you have a way to chat, you should react in the chat. You should do the clap emojis. You should do the honk emojis, right? You need to it's not just a one-way stream of you sitting there watching a video.
Yeah.
It's participatory.
And that's why I as a speaker, and I recognize that I am maybe in the minority on this. That's why as a speaker, I like pre-recorded talks better because I can be in the chat actively engaging with the people who are watching me talk at the same time. And it replaces the interactivity that I lose by presenting virtually. Because if I am doing a live presentation virtually, it's just me staring into my camera. I can't interact with people at all. But so I would rather spend twice as much time by pre-recording my talk, staring into a camera with no interactivity, and then watching it live so I can actually interact with people. Because I need the social interaction.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually.
And that
one of the things too, I think, again, is with every bit there was a Zoom and there was Rambly in the hallway track, which was really cool because, again, exactly like you said, you don't want to see static and just watching it. I got to say this, look, and I did a talk and we'll talk about that later, but I think the CNCF is probably aware of this as well. The software that they used to be interactive just was not interactive at all. And so having that, going in the Slack channel and saying, okay, I liked how you do this, and it was really cool. And again, having those other mechanisms like, hey, let's jump on Zoom and get introduced to somebody. So many people were in those Zooms and Ramblies that had never, their first CubeCon. So it's, hey, welcome from the ambassador of the year, from Ian, from me, from like Duffy, from Jason D. Tiberius. Like, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to be able to interact with people as they were giving their talks on Slack. That was unique and very different. That's a great point, Kat. I want to do another topic, introduce another topic here really quick. Among the keynotes, there was also one about how everybody is there's every kind of engineer. It was the ADA training, which focuses on diverse communities. And shout out to AWS. AWS had paid for a keynote slot, and they donated it to ADA and Leah to come and give their talks. That's a pretty big move. I mean, the keynote on the final day of KubeCon, that's a big deal.
I was wondering what was up with that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that
cool
was really sweet of them. That, like, I don't know, you don't see that kind of contribution very often at conferences, so I really liked that.
Yeah, very good. I thought it was really good.
No, and they represented it as well. I mean, you got like some sort of motorcycle acrobatic badass who's also building Kubernetes. That was impressive.
Hey, all I do is shitpost on the internet. So
the other big change coming in one of the keynotes was talking about moving the release cycle of Kubernetes from 4 times a year to 3 times a year, partially inspired by COVID, but it looks like it's a permanent change. Any comments on that?
So that was from Stephen Augustus, if I can take that one. And basically, I think, Stephen was, what I thought was cool about it, the way that he mentioned the community was like where it's, it's the people behind it that's, it's doing that informed that choice. And the fact that he put that on as a poll first on Twitter.
On a Twitter poll, that's
was
for all the decisions get made these days.
What do you call it? The scientific poll.
So great stuff there. Again, it's like the people behind it, and like I said, that's probably what it was the impetus for doing that. It's like, look, we're human at this. We're getting hit hard. The 2020 of it all, right? So
yeah, but also, this is such a good thing for actual end users, though, because if you are a person the sound of my voice and you run Kubernetes in production, like, just go find out what version you're on, because it's probably not 119. It's probably not 118, right?
Yeah. Dude, I ran into a 110 in the wild recently.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, I was. We can bring this back up later. I was some of the cool stuff that's in like 120, 121, and I mentioned this to one of our SREs, and they're like, "Oh, we are so far behind on Kubernetes updates."
Yeah.
So maybe instead of asking for people with 5 years of Kubernetes experience in job applications, they should just say 5 versions of Kubernetes, because that actually represents the actual experience of the community right there.
The actual breadth of required knowledge too. Like,
I mean, it's tough. Like that, it's the sign of like maturity for a lot of projects, I think, or a lot of like projects that are targeting more real world. I don't want to say real world. That's a bad way to phrase this.
Yeah.
The more you get into the enterprise, though, right? The more you get into regulated environments, the more you get into environments with a lot of controls. Like, releasing fast becomes a vice rather than a virtue, simply because of the amount of people that need to touch that decision. And so fewer releases, I think, is not only good for the people that are doing the actual process of releasing, but also very kind to the people that are maintaining and operating these clusters.
There's got to be a balance, right? Like, you don't want to go back to the time when we would get like one major and also huge update like every 3 years, because that was always miserable. It was always a huge problem for like end users and for the people who actually have to like maintain that service or whatever. But I also don't. Updating something like Kubernetes is still kind of a bear, so you don't want to be going through that like once a month.
I mean, we have
this is a plug for Rancher's system upgrade controller, which I used in my home cluster talk because it is badass and was able to upgrade the cluster.
But it's never a technical issue. Like, this is, I feel like I've harped on this every single day we've been here. Like, these aren't technical issues with upgrading from one version to the other.
no,
it's
you're right.
entirely people issues. It's entirely
people problems. People have to babysit that.
I need a ton of sign-offs. I need all sorts of like documentation, and I need security, and I need regulatory. I need all these different teams that have maybe more important things or other things, or simply don't work at the same site, the same impedance that you're at, right? It's the famous Microsoft impedance mismatch problem of my needs and your desires don't sync up. Like when I'm wearing my apprentice shirt, not for any particular reason other than it's like one of the most soft and comfortable tech company t-shirts I own. But we had so many problems because we were entirely in these huge enterprises, big banks, insurance, whatever, healthcare, whatever. The complexity of dealing with as like a development team, 4 or 5 or 6 major versions in the wild, and trying to handle all the security backports, and trying to handle like, oh, this is a cross-cutting concern amongst multiple versions. It's incredibly difficult from a maintainer point of view, even in proprietary software. So I think reducing the workload is good both on the release side, but really especially on the operator side. I think it's a very good move.
Yeah, I don't ever remember working with a team where by the time we were to production with a particular version that it was still the latest version.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It just sucks when you feel like you're already behind on day one of a live cluster. It's tough. So I love the new stuff. I'm all about the shiny. I think we all work in the shiny of tech, but at the same time, people are already completely overwhelmed, and I don't work with anyone that has a bunch of free time. So yeah, we need more. We need less updates in my mind. So
yeah.
So we'll get into some of the other news and the talks of the day. And shout out to Waleed, who's saying that in their regulated environment, they're using OpenShift to do push button upgrades. Seems pretty streamlined, pretty rad.
But I think that's
we're gonna
because
get
of the
into
Core OS acquisition, right? And so that helped with that. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
No, you're good.
I mean, GKE makes it easy to upgrade too, right? Like all the vendor solutions are pretty good at this.
Yeah. No, I agree. But
It's a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah.
I want to be able to control it as code. That's why I like the system upgrade controller, because I can just check it into Git. I'm very GitOpsy. People that know me, they're always saying I'm GitOpsy. That's actually a good transition. We do want to talk just tech for a little while. We're going to go into the talks of the day and some of the other news of the day, but I actually wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the stuff that I missed the most from the hallway tracks of live conferences. And that's just talking about my favorite tech with people and learning about some new stuff that I haven't heard of before. And so, Kat, you were talking about Nix, the package manager. So maybe we could just jump over to you and you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm just really, really lazy. I've said this before. As a developer, I am incredibly lazy, which is why I like DevOps, because I will put in like a ton of effort on the front end of something to make sure that I don't have to deal with something painful and repetitive later on. Mm-hmm. And Nix is a package manager for Linux, so it just makes it much easier to spin up like your personal Linux environment with all of the everything exactly the way you like it every single time. It can get a little bit culty sometimes in a very similar passionate way to the people who get really culty about like Emacs or Vim. So it's that kind of like weird tech thing. It's not really cloud native specific. It's just something I really like because I don't like repeating myself. And if there is a problem with my operating system that takes me more than like 30 minutes to fix, I just burn it down. I do not spend time trying to unravel it. I just reformat and reinstall. And that happens a lot. So having something like Nix there to make it easier for me to get my working environment back the way I like it is really, really helpful. I do the same thing with Windows, maybe more frequently with Windows actually, but I have so few things installed on Windows that I don't actually know if there's a similar tool. If there is, somebody please let me know.
They have one for Go, because I'm still trying to fix like old versions of Kubernetes API blowing up my builds and stuff. It drives me crazy.
Not that I know of.
No, I don't think so.
Go packaging
So-
still a problem. Okay.
Go packaging is still a problem. I like Go modules better than what we had before, but I still am not the biggest fan of it. It's better than what we
Kind of
had.
Stockholm syndrome. There were a
Yeah.
lot of really good ideas about how to do Go package management, and modules maybe weren't the one I would have picked, but
But it's the one we got, and I learned
we
Go
got.
I don't know, 6 months before Go modules came out. So maybe I just didn't get attached enough to GoDep or Glide or whatever the other ones were to form a strong opinion. But I don't know. I'm fine with Go modules, I guess.
So many problems in Go come. It's one of those things where it's like fruit of the tainted tree or whatever, where so many problems in Go can directly be traced back to GoPath.
Yeah.
And a lot of decisions that were made earlier in the language that worked pretty well for Rob Pike and Google, but maybe don't work so well for the rest of us who like to do things in our own way.
Yeah, I just don't know why it was designed that way in the first place. And that's not snark. I genuinely do not know or understand why it was designed that way in the first place. Does anybody actually have an answer to that? Because I really don't know, and it's mystifying to me.
I know some people on Twitter you could ask.
Yeah, I just assume it means that I don't understand it and that I'm a dum-dum or something. Because
I wouldn't say that. I mean,
somebody
You're a
else has to
dum-dum.
figure this out, and I'm the only one that is still struggling over here.
Nope. I'm struggling, and fortunately, it's my job to be very public about my struggles. So don't feel bad about the fact that you're struggling.
Kat, if you tweet about this, I will link it into my work Slack, and I will sick the ex-Google people on it.
Okay, excellent.
And see if any of them will deign to reply.
Ooh, to lower themselves to grace me with.
Actually, I think a lot of them don't have Twitter.
No promises.
They're
but
smart.
That's the right move. Actually, you should delete your Twitter.
Well, we'll need to start another podcast just to focus on package management woes, which I think we could talk about all day. But Austin, let's go over to you. You had a technology pick. Brett, do you want to make a point before we move on with Austin?
Oh, a point? Nope.
No point. 0
Sorry, I
points
saw you
for
start
Brett.
talking.
That's okay.
1 point for Austin then. So Austin, you brought up Open Telemetry Prometheus sidecar. Taryn, if you want to throw that up, tell us about it, Austin.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to take this as an opportunity also to talk about a talk, which was from my favorite thing on day 3 of KubeCon in general. This is where all the maintainer track talks go to die in a lot of ways. I feel like I shouldn't say that, but a lot of the maintainer stuff I think on the last day is really interesting, and so I spent most of my day in maintainer talks. And SIG Instrumentation was talking about how in 1.21, so not this next release, but the release after, there will be distributed tracing for the Kubernetes API server in Kubernetes, and this will be powered by OpenTelemetry tracing. So the cool thing about this is that OpenTelemetry, if you were listening to the panel listening to the show yesterday, or looking at a lot of the stuff, you probably heard people talk about the OpenTelemetry collector, and it's this very cool. Basically, it's a single Go binary, and it's like a Swiss Army knife. It lets you bring in application telemetry like metrics and traces and eventually logs and convert them to some other format. So what'll be going in 121 is I can take metrics I can take traces from the API server, put them into an OpenTelemetry collector, and then I can kind of forward them on to Jaeger, Zipkin, or wherever else. One thing we've done at Lightstep is that to support this kind of Prometheus, a lot of people use Prometheus. It's extremely popular for a lot of good reasons. But right now there's kind of this problem where if you're using Prometheus, you kind of there can be a lot of reconfiguration needed, right? You might have gone through and you might have set up everything to kind of work with Prometheus in a certain way. So what this sidecar does is that this will actually kind of sit next to your Prometheus server as a sidecar, scrape metrics off of it, and then forward it to an OpenTelemetry collector. so that instead of having, so if you're deploying OpenTelemetry, maybe you already have Prometheus and you're wanting to try out some other things, you can use this sidecar to really quickly and easily get those Prometheus metrics that are already being sent into your server and then put them somewhere else. And this can be used for everything from, proprietary solutions, right? Like obviously I work for a vendor about traces, but you can go into, like, AWS has a distro, so you can like get these into AWS format really easily. You can get them into like Splunk or a lot of these other companies that are doing, metrics now, and maybe they don't have a Prometheus ingest path. Like this lets you do that. And it also lets you kind of do it whatever you want with it, because when you get it in the collector, you can do anything. You can put it to a file. You can put it into, JSON. You can put it into. I was talking to a guy from Spotify, not Spotify, sorry, Shopify. Very similar names.
I do that a lot.
Yeah. We should have a council. Like you two need to go in and fight and figure it out.
What's funny is, I heard somewhere that like they said their Slack, they have a Spotify Shopify channel, so they can basically, that's shared between the companies. They can share things. Hey, somebody asked about that. Yeah, that's what I heard. I don't know if that's insider stuff. Sorry.
Insider, yeah, but either way, Shopify, Spotify, you're on notice. Figure it out. One of you got to change your name. But if I was talking to a Shopify person, and they were talking about moving or creating like a exporter from the OpenTelemetry collector into bucket storage, right? Like into Google Cloud storage, so that you can take these metrics, you can take these traces, you can take anything that goes into that collector, and then put it into sort of cold storage, and then go back, throw that into BigQuery, do whatever you want at that point, because you basically have SQL across all of your application telemetry, across all of your infrastructure telemetry, and that is super friggin' cool.
That is actually so rad.
Yeah, because those are the sort of things that are like expensive and hard to do using open source stuff right now, right? Like there's tooling for this, but you kind of got to do it the way they want you to do it. And there's vendor stuff for this, and you kind of got to do it the way you want to do it. But if you want to build your own thing, like we're getting to that point where you can kind of go in and do all this observability stuff, this cool observability stuff, without having to necessarily go through a vendor, right? You can build what works for you. And that's super exciting to me.
It's like the observability version of like Connects or something.
Kinda, yeah. Like, hey, I can take all these different things. I have a talk that I've been thinking about making, which is how good developer tools and Zelda Breath of the Wild have in common.
Can we replace Breath of the Wild with Genshin Impact because it's hotter right now?
No, because weapon degradation is actually important to this, to the concept.
Oh, okay.
All right. Save your Zelda talk for another show. We're gonna move on.
Check out
actually,
next year when I get more into YouTube. Check out my YouTube channel.
To another topic. I noticed that the star of the show was Falco. I feel like Falco came up in almost every talk that I was in. During the I think Duffy talked a lot about Falco, and I didn't realize really what it was. And it basically is this service that sits in me.
You want me to break it down for you, Dan? I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan. Bail me out.
Yeah, no worries. So basically, Falco is a CNCF project, right? It's basically for like behavioral analysis rules engine that runs and sends outputs, right? And so it's tapping into the kernel to be able to do that. And so we have like these out of the box rules that are contributed by the community, right? And also we have something called, just default outputs, the standard out, all those types of things. But then we have something called Falco Sidekick, which a big competitor or contributor put in play. And basically it's extended, us to be sending out the things like Loki. We have obviously we can send out the Prometheus and all that fun stuff. So check out falco.org. Again, there's a reason why it's, tapping into this fake functionality is really cool. We had as part of my talk, Duffy mentioned it. Leo Di Donato, who's one of the main maintainers of it, did a talk about bypassing Falco, so talking about how, you can do this, some of the stuff in Lua. And it's phenomenal because it's basically what somebody told me. I was talking to somebody, I think from Circle CI, and they were like, well, what I know the power of eBPF, something doesn't make it easy for me to kind of understand how to create rule sets and things like that in the environment. And so that's why I think Falco's gaining a ton of traction. I'm biased. At the end of the day, because I've seen it since Loris, our founder, built it the first day. So like, it's a great project. I'm so happy to see it.
The thing that caught my attention, there were two things. There was Duffy talking about how it sits at and watches system calls, that everything is going on, so it can actually see every kind of action that's happening on the cluster.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I saw was in your talk today that Dan Pop gave, and Taryn, maybe you can throw that link in the chat. This one is the everything you should be doing but aren't DevSecOps for Kubernetes workflows. You had this really cool flow where you had open policy agent that had policies that were implemented in the cluster. And then when a policy was violated, Falco noticed it and noticed that it violated a policy that had been defined in OPA, and then actually sent out alerts on that. And I thought, okay, actually, this is really cool.
Purposely, and we did I did the talk with Steven Toronto, who's at Fruits and Brews Al, and we purposely wanted to do it. There's this idea, which I don't know where it came from. Like OPA and Falco can work very well together. OPA is a great tool for compliance and all that. And also Falco is a great thing for that as well, because you have behavioral analysis that you can tie it to rules. You can tie it to like Kubernetes audit log capabilities as well. So that example that you said was, Steven had an OPA rule that he was creating a namespace that he shouldn't. When he did that, well, guess what? That was Falco was tapping into the audit log to be able to say, well, Steven's not a person who's allowed to do that. And then having that send that thing out to Slack or something like that using the Falco Sidekick, which is right out of the box there. That's cool stuff. So yeah.
Good comment from Waleed saying the combination of OPA plus Falco is rad. So it's getting real use out there. It's not just for talks. I don't want to throw the cold water on Falco too quick, but Brett, I want to
see what you did there. Cold water.
Nice.
I want to go over to you, Brett. Either a technology pick or talk pick. What are you thinking?
Well, I have to pick just one.
You don't have to pick just one.
You do both. Yeah, that'd be great.
I'd say the I didn't see the talks, so it's hard to. I guess it's a technology pick, but this is like because of the M1 announcement. I feel like this is the start of the year of ARM again, because we've had many years where people think that this is the year of ARM when we had AWS ARM instances, and but the talk specifically was Alex Ellis's basically Raspberry Pi cluster, Kubernetes, all the things. A shout out to him because he's been hustling hard for a couple of years now, doing his own thing as an independent developer in open source. And I met him long time ago as a Docker captain, and we've stayed connected. And he's been on my show, and he generally just a guy working hard, trying to help people. Yeah,
great guy.
And
great
get the
guy.
word
He's
out.
been on my show,
guy.
but I'm sorry to interrupt you. But like,
yeah,
it is a crying shame. You all should be, he has this thing for donating, and I think it's amazing that you all have benefited from a lot of his work. If you've seen Raspberry Pi setups and me on the Medium, he's one of the biggest contributors from that perspective. And so shame on you if you're not contributing to alexellis.org. Sorry, I'm gonna say.
Yeah. I am a GitHub sponsor for him, and he basically makes tools that help Kubernetes and common development problems like letting your friends come and look at your web server on your local box through the internet tunneled securely, stuff like that. And he just makes nice little friendly tools. Anyway, he had a talk all about updates on Raspberry Pi, where it's going, and it was one of those call outs in Slack where he was just cranking on the questions while his talk was going on. Everybody was asking stuff. He was throwing out resources left and right. I basically have without even looking at the videos of the conference, I have another month of Slack links and the crashing 1,000 tabs of Chrome kind of problem, because there's just so much stuff in conversation that I learned about, even especially during the keynotes. Like it was just nonstop. People are like, oh yeah, they're talking about this now and this now. And I can't keep up. But slightly unrelated to the talks, this is like the year that all of us had to learn more about audio and video, being remote tech workers. And if you work in tech, you were probably called upon by your friends or family to help them work remotely. Like, I don't know if any of us have had to support a family member that has to figure out how to use Zoom, but some of us at some time during 2020 in tech probably had to level up a little bit of maybe our audio and editing game. And there's this sort of crazy AI tool. It's Descript, descript.com. I don't get anything from them. I'm just a fan and a user. But it is basically
DE.
Descript, DE script.
Yeah, Descript.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And they have first off, they have the banging best intro video to like tell you what their technology is. But essentially, it's what if video and audio editing was as easy as a Google Doc? And then on top of that, what if we AI'd your voice after you read, a couple of old, Creative Commons open library 30 minutes of talking about, I think it was Wizard of Oz. I think the thing I had to read. I gave it 30 minutes of me reading Wizard of Oz. Now it can put my voice in AI on top of my video and audio to fix the. And when I said Docker and I meant Kubernetes or whatever, it is the stuff I show my tech friends when I want to impress them about how crazy tech is getting right now. So
have you used them since the video update?
Yeah.
You like it?
Yep. Yes. It has a one or two little quirks, and it doesn't work on big server very well yet, but it is.
I'll have to try that again. I not to.
Yeah.
As a counterpoint, not a counterpoint, but as someone else that has used this. I used them from like when I was subscribed for about like a year from when they announced it to now. There's a lot of things that are really cool about it, and there's a lot of things that are like extremely frustrating in terms of like trying to do stuff that I felt should be simple that wasn't, like basic multi-track editing or like, hey, I want to drop in some audio. Like I want to drop in like an audio sting at the beginning of this podcast, right?
Right.
Like there's a lot of things that are very cool, but there's a lot of things that they force you kind of into their like, no, you have to do the speech recognition and then you have to do the like delete stuff.
Opinionated tech is the stuff of 2020 and beyond.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's super opinionated, and some people might.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go on.
I was just gonna say, and it's not. It's if you're already a video editor, if you already know how to use like Final Cut Pro or Premiere, or whatever, like it's gonna really be frustrating for you. But it's not really meant for that crowd. Even though I am one of the converts, you're right. It was a very frustrating conversion of like this thing is not doing what I want. But now what I've done is I've been able to have a team help me make audio and video that doesn't know those traditional tools because it's drag and drop Google Edit type of, Google Doc Edit kind of thing.
Yeah. I need to go back and one of my 2021 things is to go back and try with the video stuff and like give it a fresh set of eyes.
I could have used this advice. I had to edit 5 shows in a week, so I appreciate that. You gave me this a little late, pal.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Honestly, I do mostly Adobe Creative Cloud stuff, so I'm using Audition and Premiere.
Yeah, same here.
And I mean, some of it is familiarity. Like I had to do a lot more with AV editing this year than I've had to do prior to this year. But I've been in like this isn't my first rodeo, and so it's kind of like that old school way of doing it makes sense in my brain. I'm also getting older, so
I'm thinking, and tell me what you think about this. And I'm sorry to go off on a little rant here, Dan, but I'm really thinking the next coupon from Mia, I want to submit a talk about actually doing video and audio for like folks that are doing cloud native because
that's a great idea.
It's like a panel, just talk about because this world right now, people are like, well, okay, I get a ring cam and I'm good to go. It's like, well, there's some other things you need to think about. Everyone's wants to start a blog.
Special guest Ninja to come on and talk about streaming.
It is one of those things that where like there's so much. I did a big write up, because I had a ton of people ask like, how did I do Deserted Island, and I wrote it all up in my blog, and like every now and then I go back and I read that blog, and I'm like, there's so much stuff I forgot to put in here.
Yeah.
There's just like things that I kind of knew.
You can just go back and edit it.
That's what I'm telling you. I really feel like, Austin, like I would love to do a panel, and I'm just throwing it out there. If you all want to see this, let's do it. Where we literally talk about how you put together this, about how you put on, Deserted Island DevOps, talk about the new experiences for getting, this content and stuff out there. That would be phenomenal. I think
I'm
people
right here.
would love that.
I'm here for it.
Okay, let's talk after.
Let's talk after this. I've been thinking about it.
Wait, to wrap that up. 1 second. Wait, don't second. 1 second. Don't. I'm going to give you a link real quick. We'll put it in the. So if you can share it, because I don't think I can share links. I completely agree with this on the education part, but I have a link to a Notion that I put together, and it's like it's what I give out to speakers. Guests are going to be on my show, or people that are going to do speaking at a conference, and it's all the hardware, software, pros and cons, stuff like that. So I will get that to you in a second as soon as my Notion stops.
I'm looking forward to it.
Right.
Yeah, we'll throw that in the chat. So thank you all for your technology picks, and we got a little bit of discussion around talks in there. My technology pick that I'm going to share for the final on this topic before we move on would be all of the security stuff that I have been learning about. So beyond, we had yesterday the discussion around the honk CI, honk control. honk control.
When's honk going to be available in CodeFresh to GitOps 2.0? By the way, codefresh.io/popcastpop.
Oh, you know, honk is coming in. So honk CTL are these challenges that were put together around doing Kubernetes security exercises, and I think these are really cool. Looking at it, I thought these are super cool, and I asked Jeff, because I was chatting with him earlier today about what kind of challenges he might think about for people who are newer to Kubernetes, ones that are maybe a little less, because this is a puzzle for people that are using, let's say intermediate at least level Kubernetes. And he suggested, though he said he hasn't used it, so I've just been checking it out, is Kubernetes Goat. And looking through this, it takes you through a couple of different exercises to do container escape to a host system, attack priority. It looked like a lot of. Have you done this, Dan Pop?
Yeah, I have. And so basically, what I love about it, again, it's incorporating a lot of the attacks that you normally see, like sensitive key and code bases, SSRF, Docker benchmarks, the usual. I think they've actually incorporated some Falco in there as well for runtime capabilities, crypto miner container. I mean, all the things that you want to kind of test your system against. It's amazing because, like, I use it as an example of how to trigger some of the the fault alerts and what have you. But I see it also in the wild a lot. Very, very, very cool project. So shout out to Mad Huakula, if you can pronounce that right. Yeah, on GitHub.
Yeah, and it is on Katacoda, so you can actually, you don't even need to download anything and go play around with it. I feel like I want to spend some time with it, so I'm better prepared for the next Honk CTL challenge. And actually maybe have a shot. I gotta do some work. Gotta put in the work.
I've never heard of that before. I'm gonna mess with it this weekend because it sounds fun.
Real easy to set up.
We're gonna live stream it next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
It's a good idea.
Let's do it.
Depends on when it is. But,
Deal. Let's do it.
Right.
So the next topic from the news, and actually we had talked a little bit about yesterday, but Brett threw it back in here, is the announcement of the GitOps working group. So Brett, I want to go to you first, and then just kind of get reactions, and then before I share mine.
I think for me, the GitOps. I mean, I'm an operations person that pretends to be a developer, and so anything that operationalizes this, gets operators more into Git and into the developer mind of commits and stuff like that, I'm a huge fan of. So I've been talking about it incessantly all year long. It's like, I think it's the number one request from a lot of my students is a GitOps course. And the fact that we are getting a little bit beyond like the first and second tool idea concepts, and that we're actually singing Kumbaya, holding some hands a little bit, is pretty exciting, because a lot of this stuff, we start out with one person's idea. It's a little opinionated. And I think we're going to very quickly get to, over the next couple of years, this, multiple options that all are essentially the same workflow, right? Kind of like how CI had to do that over decades, but eventually we worked it out. I think the GitOps is going to have a faster approach to it, so that we'll have a more consistent workflow there. I basically tell every one of my clients, like, my goal by the end of this project is that you're doing GitOps, as an introduction when you're doing containers for the very first time, because that's usually my clients are new to containers. And I want it's like, I don't want to teach them the bad habits. I want them to learn the good habits on day one. So I'm trying to get them in the GitOps on every step of the way to container native, computing, basically. So yeah, whatever it takes. And this is a great step. I'm excited about it.
It is so cool, because I remember several years ago, like when I was first introduced to GitOps as like a formalized thing, and I'm very excited to see that progress to where it is today, right? Like where you have working groups, you have like this is a very serious part of the future and the cloud native future.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of maybe.
Can we go back to? Hey, can I mention something? So Dan, like, can we go back to? Remember the last time during the summer we had during the EU session we did one of these, and somebody was like, one of the questions was GitOps future fad.
We talked about. I talked about this yesterday.
Right. I mean,
talked about
look,
it yesterday. Yeah, I've come around. I've come around.
So GitOps future or fad, Dan?
Oh, it's here and it's here to stay, and it's going to grow and it's going to grow and it's going to grow. I mean, but I didn't think it was a fad. I thought it was amazing. I still think it's amazing.
Kat, you've changed your tune. You say it's here to stay.
Yeah, I've come around on it. Like my issue, I said this yesterday. So if you watched this yesterday, you're gonna hear a repeat. But my issue is that I don't like cramming ops onto random words. It is buzzwordy.
Ops?
Huh? I
hate
hug ops. I hate hug ops so much. Please never.
I mean, you are cramming ops onto a random word very specifically with that.
Yeah, I really don't like it. So my objection to GitOps was mostly an issue of the name. It makes it sound buzzwordy.
It's an unfortunate combination.
Yeah. And I am just allergic to buzzwords. I don't use them if I can avoid it. I also don't use jargon or abbreviations if I can avoid it. But that's a consequence of like as a career choice, I mostly am speaking to like very, very, very new people. And terms like that are not friendly when you're speaking to newbies.
Yeah.
So if they don't like it, just honk at them.
Yeah, just honk at them,
So,
and they understand that. They understand that because it's an unavoidable Twitter meme. But I have come back around on GitOps.
What about commit-based operations?
I mean, that makes sense.
First,
isn't that just GitOps?
Well, so this is actually one of the interesting things about this standard. If Taryn, you don't mind throwing this up, is that it actually does not require Git. It requires version-controlled immutable storage.
Right.
Okay, but it requires Git.
But you could do it with potentially some other back end, and this is actually an important point. So I'll share. Actually,
let me hear all my Perforce heads in the chat.
Yeah, all the Perforces are coming out.
Let me get on my Subversion fanatics.
Team Foundation.
So
the last place I worked was like all SVN. I have stories.
There's some reasons for it, but I will share just so this, like all cards on the table. I was involved in the creation of the GitOps working group, and I'm on the maintainers list here. But the governance here, there was a little bit of question from the community because this has been formed under the Flux CD org. And so I think it's worth addressing that. I saw Tracy Miranda, the head of the CD Foundation, was making questions about it, and there were some other people. I was talking to some other open source maintainers that were asking, "Hey, why is this under Flux? What's the deal there?" And really, I think that probably in the next week, this is going to be moved under SIG application delivery, and it won't be part of the Flux. One of the things that I talked a lot about with the other maintainers coming up to this was, is this a Flux thing or is this a community thing? Is this a community thing that it needs to be somewhere else? And everybody agreed, and all the Weaveworks folks and Alexis, all those people were so great, and they were like, hey, this has got to be a community thing. This has got to be something that's for everybody. We're going to move it into this. It's shared org because we do want these other GitOps operators like Argo. I mean, they should be part of it. So I think that's going to be the move.
Was the talk, is they're going to move it over to the CDF? I'm sorry, I missed this one. What is it?
No. In the CNCF.
CNCF. Okay.
Shout out to Weaveworks.
Yeah.
Hi, Alex. Bye, Alex.
Yeah. Shout out to Weaveworks. Awesome people. Yeah.
Yeah, Alex, you got to go back on the stream and find when everybody was singing your praises.
But Alex, also I want to point out, Dan is cheating. That's a virtual background.
Yeah. That's
Dan from CodeFresh and not Pop. Thank you. No cheating.
Yes, that is Dan from CodeFresh is cheating. He is using a virtual background.
Yeah,
I am too, but it's extremely obvious.
This is brilliant. I got onto a stream with a couple of people, and they had really awesome bokeh backgrounds. And I said, "Hey, your background's awesome. Can you move for a second?" And I took a screenshot of it, threw it up, and it costs like $3,000 less to make than the setup they were using.
Okay, so somebody has a camera lens that they are using for live streaming that is doing that.
Oh yeah, no, Jessica.
Can you find out what the lens is?
Me.
You? What is that lens?
It's a Canon EOS DSLR. Well, actually, these are mirrorless, so it's an M50.
Yeah, but what's the actual lens?
It's an f-stop 2. Yeah, it's a
16 millimeter.
43 millimeter. It's the fixed lens. It's the only one that's a tiny little. It's like that thick.
Oh yeah.
Pancake lenses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Presumably, this
exactly.
is your Notion link, right?
I have a kits link, by the way, we can use if you
I don't
really
know
need
if it's in the Notion. I feel like when you start talking about bokeh and you start getting into specific lenses for your camera, like you're on a level that people are you are disconnected from the social order at that point. Like,
well, share your kit link as well, Brett and Taryn, if you wouldn't mind throwing.
Can I throw a link? Can I throw a really awesome YouTube channel? Camera Conspiracies. Have you all checked it out? It's awesome.
Yes.
This guy just it's one of my favorite things. This guy just basically critiques every camera, every lens. It's a great one. It really helped me. So
second only to Lockpicking Lawyer.
Oh, I love that channel.
Actually, Dan, if you don't mind, not Dan Pop, other Dan, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to bring up, because we're kind of in the newsy segment, right? And
yes.
One thing that I've noticed that is I feel like a departure from prior CubeCons is how little news there is.
Yeah, not a lot of jaw droppers.
I think the Instana one was the big one, right? Which props to them.
Yeah,
props to Instana.
Apps 2.0 didn't blow your minds?
That too, very much jaw dropping.
But you think about and I feel like some of this is, and maybe we'll see how this goes going forward, right? Like, obviously, there's fairly good news on the pandemic front, but in a more prosaic sense, wow, are we getting to the point where there's kind of not this is all just mechanical now? It's background noise. Kubernetes has won, and we're in the trough of winning where nothing really interesting happens until stasis sets in.
I think I realized Kubernetes had won when I went to my first KubeCon, which was the last in-person one in San Diego. And there were multiple yacht parties sponsored by companies that had paid an outrageous amount of money to sponsor the conference. That was when I was okay, we're approaching Amazon reinvent music festival situation.
You got to invite me to these yacht parties because no one invited me on a yacht last year.
Well, we had a helicopter party.
You had a helicopter party?
Yeah, we had a helicopter party. But you know what? Next in-person one, we'll grift our ways onto a yacht party. Okay.
Yeah. Brett, what do you think? Is it that it's that it's getting boring? Are we in a trough of success?
Specifically for Kubernetes? Are we talking
Specifically for Kubernetes, maybe cloud native in general, right?
Ecosystem. Yeah. I think it's going to take a while for us to iterate on this and figure out if this is really it's not going anywhere, right? But
there's no way. It's too we have too many companies and too many other services and products that rely on other services and products and on and on and on that are all wrapped up in Kubernetes now. No, I think it is firmly here to stay. It's got its tentacles and everything.
To call back to day one.
You're talking to the Docker Swarm fan, by the way. I was a diehard last to quit on Swarm.
Yeah, no, I when I was at Apprenda, I knew our goose was cooked when I went to DockerCon the year y'all announced Swarm, and you had Tev on stage. Actually, no, he wasn't on stage, but he worked for you then. But when he did. He did the Docker Swarm demo, and I remember sitting there and I looked over at my coworker, who I think is now at Red Hat. But I looked at her and I said, "Oh, we're redacted." Because we were doing platform as a service. We were very old school, and it's just oh no, this is going to eat our lunch. And
then I think the Docker people saw Kubernetes and were like, this is going to eat our lunch. And just a
lot of lunches have been eaten in fairly rapid succession in the industry.
But again, there's a tool for every task. At the time, you had to use what you needed to use. It's don't fall.
I think the challenge now I think is shifted to distributions. Right now it's all about the number one question I get from everyone on every show every week is, which Kubernetes distribution should I use? And they're just overwhelmed by choice. Now we're even getting into everyone has to have their own mini Kubernetes distribution. So we've got all the keys, the COs. I don't even know how you say the KOS yet, but
or zero distribution.
And COs. I think it's COs. I don't even know how to say.
The beer cozy.
Microcates.
We're gonna get K16s at some point. Twice as much.
That's the global. Is that like all region
that's
Kubernetes?
The global scale. That's the global scale. Multi-cluster is going to be K16s.
I think we said yesterday that K16s was twice the features and none of the functionality was what it was.
Hey, that's the inevitable fate of all software, and that's the thing that's the thing I keep with it, right? Like there is an arc to history, there is an arc to software, there is an arc to open source, and so it's always good to stay humble because everything we're doing today
it could be gone tomorrow, like so easily, and we've seen that happen repeatedly throughout the years. Something that is just like it's the hotness. We're convinced it's never going to go away, and then suddenly, like
what we always say about Kubernetes is that the underlying kind of control plane may change, but those APIs are probably going to stick around for a long time because they're so robust. And Kubernetes has always been about the APIs. At the same time,
EC2, man.
I don't think that we have won. I don't think Kubernetes has won in the sense that the game is over. I think Kubernetes has won in the Sun Tzu, you've won the battle before you get to the battlefield kind of way. Because even though Kubernetes is in 90% of enterprise companies, still less than 10% of workloads. And so what needs to happen for those other 90% of workloads? There's actually some serious problems that got to be worked out. So storage, nobody's won storage yet. Somebody's going to come along and they're going to make storage so brilliant and so easy that it's going to completely change the game. And there's a bunch of those things. I mean, we know that Prometheus is one. Prometheus has come out as a winner.
Somebody will figure out service mesh and make it easy for people. Somebody will do that. I'm sorry. I said the word. I'm sorry. I think you're
right.
I tempted
he said service mesh.
No. I'm gonna back up here though, because I've said this all week. Like the thing that we're seeing now from stuff coming into Sandbox, some stuff moving into incubation is, okay, cool. You've got a platform. Now you need to actually run it. Now you need to operationalize it. Now you need policy. Now you need control. And that's what a lot of cool stuff that's coming in is doing. I want to actually kind of to this point, there was, if you're really interested in this or Windows stuff at all, there was a really great talk from SIG Windows today on Maintainer Track where they were kind of just like going over like, hey, where are we at with this? And the Windows stuff is catching up. And at some point, like there are, Texas-sized workloads running on, .NET 4.5 with IIS that have been vaguely immune from the Kubernetes ecosystem, and those are going to be moving over not today, not tomorrow, but every day, every commit, it gets closer. And that entire
tsunami
sphere, like once that starts to flip over and it's like, okay, well, we want to consolidate onto Kubernetes for this layer, and we can also put all of our legacy .NET workloads on there. There is a lot of stuff that's going to happen around that.
Yeah,
that's for sure. It can't not. Sorry, I know it's an ugly double negative.
Brett, what were you going to say, Brett?
So you're talking to I'm a Mac house now, but I was a diehard Windows fan for at least 25 years, and still am. Got a Windows Server sitting in my closet over here, and yeah, I think that there's this tsunami coming where even right now, the Docker was really early days with Microsoft, right? Like they were buddies. Like I'm still shocked years later that Microsoft did not make a Docker competitor. They didn't make their own version of Docker and release a Windows version because Docker was Kubernetes, Linux only, really.
I'm so anyway, Microsoft didn't buy you. I'm going to be honest with you. I am completely, and if I ever in my life get to interview Solomon, I'm going to ask him that without a doubt. I'm going to put on.
All right, I'm going to point out something real quick. Apprenda had containerization for WCF, for Windows services, for all these things. We had the actual technology. It was just unfortunately wrapped up in this whole platform idea. And if we had taken that and actually gone with that, and we had pivoted like .cloud or whatever did, it would still be a going concern. But
Yeah.
that aside, like, the technology was there. People knew how to do that. There was a lot of underlying OS things that didn't work right, and that's why it was a lot easier in the Linux world. But it was not impossible. Like, you had C groups analogs, you had jobs, you could do things by like dropping down to COM. I agree that it was mind-boggling that they didn't do this in a different way, but Microsoft is an extremely, I think, active partner in the overall cloud-native ecosystem now. And
For sure.
They really
love everything they're doing.
Yeah,
well, folks, we've let the time get away from us. We're actually at the top of the hour, and that blew by quick. We had a really fun conversation. I think we could talk about the future of Kubernetes quite a bit more, as well as camera setups, as well as security, as well as storage, and all these other things, GitOps included. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. This has been a lot of fun. This is the final session of the hallway track for KubeCon. Follow CodeFresh or myself at Today Was Awesome. We'll let you know when we're going to be doing more hallway tracks, potentially for other shows or just in between shows. Why not? Again, this is the hallway track, the show for people who wish they were at the show. I was your host, Dan Garfield. Special thanks to Brett Fisher, to Kat Cosgrove, to Dan Pop, to Austin. Follow all of them on Twitter. They are all hilarious, brilliant, amazing people. And shout out to our
CodeFresh.
Shout out
to CodeFresh.
CodeFresh for putting it together.
GitOps 2.0, codefresh.io/podcast pop. Go.
And shout out to the amazing audience that we have. We've got all the CodeFresh royalty hanging out in the chatting. It's like the reverse KubeCon over here. Thanks so much again for Ian Coldwater for joining. Very appreciated.
Both of them.
Huge honor to have the Ambassador of the Year on the show.
Any parting words, Ambassador of the Year, for everyone?
You get the final word.
Oh, do I? That's a lot of responsibility. Black lives matter, and so do trans lives.
Spoken like the true the true Coldwater, the true Ian Coldwater. Thanks everyone, and have a good night. Happy Thanksgiving. Have a great end of 2020. It's coming. We're here. You survived. Just a little bit longer. Keep going. Bye-bye.
See you, chat.